الشيطان بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور والذين كفروا أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون صدق الله العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. My dear respected brothers, elders, listeners, two verses of the Holy Quran that I've recited are from Surah Al-Baqarah, para number 3. And these ayahs, verses are very popular and many of us would be familiar with these two ayahs. Number one, because they come immediately after Ayatul Kursi. Number two, those that read the Manzil regular. Manzil is a combination of verses from various parts of the Holy Quran, which is a protection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects you against the devils, the shayateen, the jinn. So it's compiled in a book form which is called Manzil. And you'll find verses from Surah Al-Baqarah, you'll find verses from Surah Al-Safat, you'll find verses from the last part of Surah Al-Baqarah, and likewise Surah Al-Jinn, and then the last surahs in the Holy Quran. So these verses are like a protection. And in this you will also find these two verses that I've recited. So these verses are protection against the shayateen and the devil, and they're very, very powerful. So we need to understand what does this mean? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in these verses and how powerful they are? Because these two verses, they come immediately after Ayatul Kursi. And as we have learned, Ayatul Kursi is the greatest ayah in the Quran. And we've learned the reason also because Allah speaks only about Himself and about His attributes in 10 sentences only. We learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes. Now, we'll begin with these two verses. In the first part of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in deen. Meaning there is no force for one to accept the religion of Islam. Now, Islam and our deen is very unique. If someone accepts Islam, you cannot force them. When a person is interested in accepting Islam, one of the questions that we ask, are you forced to accept Islam? They said, no, I've studied Islam and I've decided this is haqq, this is the truth. And throughout history, from the time of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and throughout history you can read, no one was forced to accept Islam. It was clear to them. When it became clear to them, they accepted Islam. And even in the time when the Ottomans ruled, one of the kings at the time, he decided and said, all the Jews and Christians will make them accept Islam, and all their places of worship, that we will immediately stop them. The scholar at the time reminded the Sultan, the king, of this verse of the Holy Quran, La ikraha fi din. You cannot force anyone to accept Islam and religion. There's no compulsion. And then after hearing this verse, he took back his statements And he said, okay, that's fine. This is Islam gives us this free will. In the time of Umar radiallahu anh, when, as we know, 2/3 of the world and how Islam had spread from country to country, yet there was an old lady that was living, and she was old, and she was on the religion of Christianity. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh seen that she is old. He said to her, why do you not accept Islam? And she said, Ana ajuzun kabira, I'm an old lady, and I've spent my entire life in Christianity. Now I do not wish to change and accept Islam because I've remained on this all my life. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh read this verse, La ikraha fi deen, there's no compulsion or force for someone to accept deen. And there's many stories like this that we can find in the books of Tafseer, where people had this free will to decide. Now, when were these verses revealed? As we know, the Prophet ﷺ, when he was in Madinatul Munawwarah, the Jews that were in Madinatul Munawwarah, there were 3 tribes. So there were the Jews, and then there were the Arabs. The Jews that were well equipped with all the education that they had. And then there were the Arabs that were not as equipped. And these later became the Ansars. Like we know the Muhajirin and the Ansars. Now, some of the Arabs, they would send their children to the Jews so they can learn how to read and write. So what happened? Some of them, they accepted the religion of the Jews. Now when the time came where the Jews, they were expelled from Madinatul Munawwarah and they had to leave, those parents that had sent their children to the Jews so they can learn and read and write, and they accepted their religion, they tried to force their children so they can stay with them back into Islam. And then these verses were revealed to our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. La ikraha fi deen. There is no compulsion in deen. Why? Because it's clear. From Ayatul Kursi, Allah's power, Allah's greatness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's alertness, and how powerful and great He is, and how complete He is in His knowledge, in His power, in His kingdom, in His authority. How can it's very clear. So if a person from Ayatul Kursi cannot learn the power and greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's clear. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. It's distinct what is right, what is haqq from misguidance is very, very clear. Now, so we've understood this, that to force someone to accept Islam, the Holy Quran is against this. Point number 2, a question may arise in mind, that when someone has accepted Islam, when we accept Islam, we have made an agreement, we have made a promise. We have made an agreement, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. We have bear witness and testified there is no God but Allah. And our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah's final messenger. We've made an agreement with Allah that we will follow His laws. We've made this promise, we've made this agreement. Now if you go against this agreement, then you will have to face the punishment. Because you have made a promise, you've made an agreement that you will follow Islam. So now, if a person steals, or they drink alcohol, or they gamble, or they fornicate, or they do any other sin, now what will happen for committing this crime, breaking the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the Islamic law, and obviously that does not apply everywhere, where Islamic law is being placed, then there is punishment for this because you are breaking the law. Or if a person, you wake up someone for Fajr and they say to you, La ikraha fi din, you cannot force me. No, this only applies before you accept. Once you have accepted Islam, now these laws apply on you. You will have to follow them. And there will be certain things where you will be told, and you can be punished if you don't fulfill these laws. So this is before religion accepting Islam. Once you have made that promise, you have to follow these laws. And if you don't follow these laws, depending on according to the Sharia, then one is liable for punishment for this. And even when there was fighting against the enemies, this was not to force them into Islam. This was not to force them. It was done for justice. It was done so then on Allah's earth there's no corruption, there's no fasad. وَيَسْعَوْنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا. This is what people try to do, cause corruption on Allah's earth. Injustice. The whole purpose of this fighting was so there's justice on the earth. And all the corruption that is on the earth, that is stopped. And Islam taught such rules where women and old men, or old women and old men, although that they were protected. Then Islam has given the laws of jizya and tax. And Islam protected their places of worship. So it's important, and some people accepted Islam right at the end after Makkah was conquered. And no one had forced them. So before one has that choice, when they have accepted, they've made a commitment and a promise. Just like you have in the country, we've made an agreement, we follow the laws. If you break any law, then it's clear. If you go through red lights, if you go through no entry, you're going to have to face the consequences now. Because you broke the law which is set by the country. So you'll have to face these consequences. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Taghut. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Whoever rebels, goes against the Taghut. Taghut translated as rebel, and some of the mufassirs they translate it in the name of shaitan, the devil. Taghut has come in the Holy Quran 8 times, and in this verse it has come once, and in the next ayahs come again twice, and apart from this 6 other places in the Quran. What does Taghut mean? Some of the Mufassirin they describe it as shaitan, the devil. And some have mentioned anything that distracts you away from the laws set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it's your children, whether it's your wealth, anyone, they'll be called Taghut, a rebel. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. Whoever denies, goes against the Taghut, the rebel, وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, and believes in Allah. So first what he has done, Allah did not mention وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, first he believes in Allah, but first he denies the Taghut, rebel, and then believes in Allah. Just like La ilaha, there is no God, illallah, but Allah. So likewise here as well, whoever refuses in this and believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. Now what this person has done, he has held on to, affirmed a ring which is very tight and strong. He's held on to the religion of Islam. And when a person holds on to the religion of Islam, lam fisam alaha, there's no chance that it can break. Unless this person, his own actions, he has done something. Wallahu sami'un alim. Allah indeed is all listening, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all knowing. Allah's knowledge is complete. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's listening is complete. A very powerful verse. Then Allah mentions Allahu waliyul ladina amanu. Allah is the wali and protector of the believers. 2 types of word that come for protection. Number 1 is wali and number 2 is mawla. In this verse, so one is protecting and one is protection. Both of these words are for the believers. Allah is protecting them and He has given them protection. In this verse, Allah mentions Allahu waliyul ladina amanu. Allah is a protector. Allah is a helper of the believers. And then when we call out to Allah, in the last part of this surah, what do we say? Anta Maulana, which has a number of meanings as well. And one of them, He's our protector. So now, the disbelievers, their protector is who? The Taghut, the rebel, the shaitan. But they don't have a Mawla. Allah mentions in the Holy Quran, ذَلِكَ in Surah Muhammad, para 26, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ مَوْلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given protection to the believers. And for the disbelievers, وَأَنَّ الْكَافِرِينَ لَا مَوْلَى لَهُمْ. There's no protection for the disbelievers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the believers this protection, and He protects them. يُخْرِجُهُمْ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. He takes them from the darkness to the light. Dhuluma, it means darkness. And nur means light. The word dhulumat is a plural word. So Allah has mentioned from darkness, which is not used for one darkness, but many darknesses. And nur is a single word where it's only light. For example, there can be many forms of darkness. In the early part of the night, there's some darkness. And then it gets more dark, more dark. You go into the sea, there's some darkness. You go more down, there's more darkness. You have the night where it's the peak, there's more darkness. But when it's light, it's just one. And that is what Hidayah is described as. Light is clear, that's it. But there's different forms of darkness and kufr and shirk. Some people deny the existence of Allah. Some people, they associate partners with Allah. Some people, they worship idols. Some people, they worship humans. Some people, they worship the sun. These are all different parts of dhulumat and darkness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects the believers from this. And He brings them onto hidayah, on light. And when this light is just clear, there's no different forms of light. It's just one nur and light and hidayah and guidance. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتِ. And those that disbelieve, their protector is the Taghut, the shaitan. Or as one Mufassir mentions, anything that takes you away from the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do? يُخْرِجُونَ. What's shaitan's effort? يُخْرِجُونَهُمْ مِنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. From this guidance and light, they take you towards the wrong things. And this is what shaitan does. You come to the masjid, you listen to something about deen, you listen to something about Islam, you listen to something about the Quran, you listen to hadith. But when you go out, what happens? It could be a friend, it could be a whisper from shaitan. Go and do this haram, go and do this, and such thing. That's what takes you away from the light towards the darkness. And those people whose protector is the Taghut, or what they believe, Allah mentions, أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. They are the people of hellfire. هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And they will remain in this hellfire forever and ever. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. May Allah keep us in the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah give us the ability to understand what we have said and heard and to spread unto others. Ameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.